So I'm going to try to direct a little bit the first opening piece of this. Setting aside the legislation and everything else, what is the basic problem with healthcare in America today? Not in America, but in rural America, the small town of America. What's the basic problem that we face? And I see them to be two problems pretty closely linked together. So those problems are what?
Availability.
Yes, availability is absolutely the first thing. And so we just put availability, and you all have to, I get kind of excited and don't write everything out. So it's got to be available. Then the second piece is it's got to be what? Affordable. Yeah, so you got two things that we're after. And if you believe that Washington is going to give us something that's affordable, then let me dissuade you from that belief. Again, both parties would be guilty of doing things that make it available in the big cities because that's where they get their votes. The big cities will outvote us every time. It's not about Republican, Democrat, it's about big versus small. And so they'll have availability in the big cities, but we'll be choking out here. And so we got to figure some way to set up a system that gives us these two outcomes. And with availability, then affordability is key. And so somewhere we're going to have to start getting more doctors if we're going to provide more services. It's just that simple. All right. So those things, those are kind of the playing field. And what things, you know, would really prefer that we look at this as a thinking out of the box session, and not wrangling around on existing political ideas and things like that. But there are things that can facilitate both of these. But I'd also like some marginal thinking, people that get outside and even we say, well, I don't mind saying that's a really far out idea, but we want things that direction rather than in tight and kind of banging on each other's political ribs. That's not going to get us anywhere. All right, so I'm going to start. You all have the clothes. I mean, you look like a healthcare provider. I see okay, we're going to work our way down to the industrial end of the room here. So where would you go if you could do that?
Well, maybe link the universities that are in medicine, like UNM in their medical school, their nurse practitioner program, their PA program, and bring those and have them, you know, make a commitment that so many of those people come back, maybe pay them a stipend while they're in school and have them come back to the communities to work.
So you're saying that something around the nurse practitioner and physician assistant, PAs, yeah.
And UNM.
So what do we describe that in healthcare terms? What level is that?
Well, we're looking at mid-level as well
mid-level.
as physicians.
Okay, yeah, that's the term I'm looking for. So to me, I think you're right on track, that we're going to have to, and in order to use more mid-levels, again, you all appear to be from that field. I don't know this area so well. So what does that require? What are the restrictions right now from using those mid-levels?
There are none in this state.
There are none. They can come in and they can do a surgery, they can do...
And a nurse practitioner, a PA, has to work under the license of a physician in this state.
So they got to work under the license. Does that license have to be standing there watching them in the same building, in the same town?
Well, with some of the insurances and Medicare, the rules are a little bit different. They have to be under the license, but not direct supervision for a PA, and a nurse practitioner can function independently.
Okay. All right, fair enough. So that's one thing that we have to think about. What else?
Increase primary care in this area.
Okay. And increase primary care, what does that mean? So explain how that's going to help us.
Well, primary care would be providers that provide care that's not specialty care.
Okay, and by providing more providers, that means doctors or PAs, nurse practitioners, which?
All of them.
All, because the problem is we don't have enough doctors now. Okay, you all were getting in the field, so why don't more doctors come to Artesia? I think it's the same reason they don't come to Hobbs, but I'd like for us to voice that. No, except y'all got a river and you got a football team. So I got two more things.
Housing is the biggest issue.
So you got housing, but also if you had a mansion sitting here in the middle of Artesia, what do the doctors tell you? Yeah, no shopping is what they say second. You kidding me? Is the first thing. So we're always going to have trouble getting qualify people to come to these. And what we typically do is we say, we should just try harder. I'm sorry, the problem is not trying hard. The problem is their mindset when they come here. They don't want to stay here. I know what you face. And so anytime that we come in, this level is not as they don't tend as much to disregard us, right? If I'm wrong, stop me and, yeah.
So I've got a question about that. We always bring up those as reasons doctors won't come to this town. We've got qualified people in this town for other industries.
We got qualified people for what?
To run our other industries in this town.
Yes. I don't know what it is. Maybe they teach them in medical school. They shouldn't come to places like Hobbs and Artesia, but I'm just telling you, you go across the 2nd District and I hear the same thing. It's the reason I kind of know the answers.
Congressman Pearce, I would like to add something to that as to why some positions, they may come under a contract for several years, like in Roswell, and I run Roswell. They'll come there for a couple of years, and the schooling system is not for their children, and they will move somewhere else.
So you got a dozen reasons that your primary people don't come here, but this level doesn't reject, right? It doesn't.
I've been here for years and years, since 1995, and I love this community.
Yes.
I never thought I would stay here because I was from Boston.
Right.
So, but the people are so wonderful and stuff, so once you get mid-level people here and stuff, then they do tend to stay.
The mid-levels will stay. That I'm hearing in every community, so I'm assuming that that's right. And so, again, if we're talking about availability, somewhere the system in Washington has to allow greater functionality.
To be honest with you, I think if there was, they get so, I'm sorry, I don't know, they get so.
Doctor in the house?
While you're taking care of me, they get so overwhelmed so quickly because there's already a shortage, you know, and then before they even get there, they're totally overwhelmed. So I think if there could be something like a reverse, first of all, maybe even hire teams of MPs and specialists that work together like our Dr. Pearce does, and then Dr. Baca does our orthopedic. But also, I think financial would help. Maybe if you have to put a little bit more money into it to get them to realize that the extra hours are worth a little bit more too.
Okay, so the hours.
And changing Medicare reimbursement because
Okay,
they're not
let's hold on now. Let me chase this just a minute. And that one gets very complex, and that one does come from Washington, and it's a mess. And I seem to be by myself picked up the fight when I got to Washington because everybody else was so. Okay, you got me started over here. Go back to the hour. So why do you think that Medicare reimbursement is less in the rural areas? Okay, from Washington, that's the least here. What do you think? Why do you think that the rule was put in place? No. I mean, they actually use a reason. It's just upside down thinking. The reason is that it's so much cheaper for you folks out there in the rural area. And we allowed that to go on. And so the rural areas, again, most of what goes on in Washington, this is now my little side, is big versus small. It's not Democrat versus Republican. They will sell it. They will get, either party will spin up their team, whichever one is in charge in their town. But really it's big versus small. So the big places said, well, it's so much cheaper to send a doctor out there. I'm sorry, it costs exactly the same. They go to the same medical institutions. The nurses, if you don't pay them the same here, they go to Kansas City by tomorrow morning. They'll be there working while you think they're fixing to show up for work. It's that quick. And we allow them to screw the medical reimbursement rate, the Medicare reimbursement rate, because they could, because big cities get more votes than small towns. And so somewhere we need to fight the lizard fight on this area too. Yeah. So we need to stand up as rural areas. And so if you want another fight, you got to fight the chicken first. But another fight, then get in and I'll stand beside you. Because we in the rural areas can lead the discussion. And the reason I'm throwing it at y'all because you've got one of the most active communities here. When the timber industry was killed, not one community stood up and said, we're not gonna let you kill the timber industry over the spotted owl. And by the way, the reason we killed the timber industry, we stopped logging to keep the spotted owl alive. I just visited last week, 2 weeks ago. The spotted owl is now leaving the Lincoln National Forest where we stopped logging, so the owl would live there, and they're moving over to the mescaleros where they log, because they can fly in between the trees where they log. They don't clear cut. And so we killed the timber industry because no one spoke up. And you all took the lead on the lizard, and so if you want to take a lead in another fight, I'm not trying to get you into it, but I will stand beside you. I can't fight every fight. I mean, we're up to here and fight. But if you will want to accelerate this discussion nationwide, then I'll be here with you. So now then, I've done it a few on Medicare. I'm going to go back over here if you don't mind. No, that's a good point, good point. So the hours of work, I hear constantly from physicians, I just want some time off. Just want some time off. And so really, all I want to do is start you all thinking, and I'd like to come in a couple of weeks and we would have the same group plus a few more. But this idea is very innovative. And so hold up your hand, you're going to be the team leader on the discussion on the teams, because I think that we've never heard this concept before. Sorry, my teeth look like an egg, so it's the reason my wife doesn't let me do charge at home. So the hours of work is something that we overwhelm the doctors who come in here.
Yes.
They come to the emergency room in Hobbs, and after a while, they just say, hey, I'm gone. And so the physician doesn't get on his plane because they canceled a plane out of Florida. And my friend, who is the nurse practitioner in Hobbs, is the actual running the emergency room in Hobbs. Supposed to be a physician there, but the plane flight didn't work, and he ain't gonna live in Hobbs. And he's gonna come when he has to by law and by his contract. He can't do what the airlines won't do. So half the time, she's there when he's supposed to be. You know what I'm talking about. And if we don't address this issue, we're never going to improve better. And you can talk about improving the schools, but we've been talking about that for 25 years. That should be another chart over here by itself. Anyway, we need to go to work on that. But we're not going to get the schools fixed in time to start getting access and availability. You see how we're kind of, we have to think of new ways to solve the problem.
Okay. Congressman?
Yes.
Talking about the free enterprise system, why should we tell a young graduate from medical school, you know, you've invested a lot of time in this, we want you to become a primary care doc.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't he become a neurologist or a cardiologist? Because, you know, the free enterprise system is, let's do the very best. So maybe the point is, communities are going to have to start using incentives to go out and attract and hire the best doctors, and do it with incentives and monies and get the very best.
Yeah, and don't disagree at all. It gets into a whole other discussion whether, and that discussion would occur right along in here, whether that we are ever going to solve it this way. I don't know, and that's discussions that you all can have. And I think you've got now then, and never be alarmed that you have different points of view. The points of view are what bring the truth to discussion. We need both points. We need your point of view and your point of view to try to arrive at some truth. The truth of simply paying the money, which would be the only solution that we could give in Washington, is a truth that has been an untruth. I'm going to put the chart here, and I always put this because people they kind of lose track. So right now in Washington, you got your 3, 6, 2, 3. Have I told you that enough so you know what these are? What's that number? Spending. It's our budget in Washington. Washington wants you to see very complex numbers, and they put a bunch of zeros, and they put a bunch of things out here, and this, and this, and this, and this, and it all boils down to this. We spend this, and we bring in this. Now that doesn't work in your home budget, and it is not working in Washington. Where do you get the difference? The minus 1.3, where does that come from? China. But where now is most of it coming from? No.
Printing.
Where?
The printing press.
Printing. This should be alarming you that we're printing this much money a year. It's bad enough to borrow from China.
Yeah.
And you want to know the words? They don't say print anymore because it's so crass. Washington tells you, well, printing money, it makes you mad. So they don't say that. We're saying we're quantitative easing again this year. Quantitative easing, we did QE1 2 years ago. We did 0.7 of this 2 years ago. Last year, we did 0.6, and you heard just last week or the week before, Ben Bernanke, how much do we say? He's gonna quantitative ease QE3. Is that ringing a bell with anybody besides a banker? You heard those words?
Yeah.
You heard the words QE3. That is, we can't get anybody to buy our debt, and we're going to print it. And so QE3, 40 billion a year, or 40 billion a month, and which is going to put us on track for 400 billion. But they already had another 25 plus that they're doing every month. So we're going to print about 60% of this debt again. This should be really, the reason gasoline is double, it's because our dollar's worth about half as much. It's not so that, yes, all the companies are making a little bit more money, but not that much. It's because the dollar value is falling. So these are scary times. So when the question comes, can we just increase the budget for primary care? I'm saying, wait, is it worth printing the money, or can we find innovative solutions? That's what I think we as a nation are called to do. It's no longer, it's way past Republican Democrats, so please, if you think I'm pushing a Republican deal, I'm just trying to get some idea about how we can work our way forward. And if we as Americans will start talking about it, and I will guarantee we'll come back and we'll do this whole thing, and we'll tape it, and we'll put it online and let people check in virtually. We started the thing just this week, doing that with women's groups on other issues, and we'll expand it right over to here to this, because this is the question for the country. Are we going to survive economically? This is, will we survive economically? This, the 2, 3, 6. We absolutely face a failure of our currency and our government and our economy based on this. It's the reason every place in the world, you see Greece, China's having trouble, Greece, Portugal, Spain, all of those are facing bankruptcy because of this same deal. And nobody is figuring it out. So I'm saying that chances of giving more money, we can print it and give more to this system, but that tension between different points of view needs to be there, or we don't arrive at a truth. Okay, so that's the kind of discussion that we really should be having here today. Okay, other out-of-the-box thinking.
Incentives for people being well, you know, and work with companies, with employers, so that wellness, I mean, like several of the companies
Absolutely.
here do a wellness program, and
Yes.
they pay less for their health insurance
Absolutely.
if they do that, and we focus more on wellness and less on illness.
So, how many employers are in here? Are you, how many employers? Oh, yes, okay, I was saw Concho drift over here now. Okay, no problem. And by the way, maybe your nerves were not as rattly as mine as Concho began to get a big presence, but I lived in Hobbs, and we watched every one of the major companies leave within a 12-month period. We lost Chevron, Amoco, Arco, all of them had major office buildings, so when Concho bought it, my heart's sitting there beating for Artesia, and so, you know, I was sort of highlighting that they're here at this meeting, because it's a very big deal for the town this size. We didn't say anything, we didn't go and say, please stay with us in Hobbs. If they were gone, and we lost the brain power, we lost the engineers, we lost this, we lost the land, we lost all those, the accountants, all those professional things. The brain drain that happened over there was tremendous. And so again, just as you're going out, say thanks and appreciate y'all being here, and give the word to the people over in our middle that we do know. And so thank them. Okay, so you so wellness. So several years ago, my wife and I, when we paid all the bills, we began to bring in a nurse once a month, every morning, and anybody can go and get their blood pressure. In fact, we didn't mandate it, we came close, we said you gotta do it, which is close to mandating. So we wanted to check the blood pressure, take the blood test, and do all this stuff, and it was all free of charge. And it cost us almost nothing for that nurse, and then we started bringing her twice a month because it was working so well, it was saving us quite a bit of money in wellness. And so our premiums, this is not when we were with Golden, his premium was going up. But as you are well, then your premiums actually, for your small group, get to go down a little bit. So all you employers, is this worth something? Can you do this without any intervention from Washington?
A
In
lot of
other
them
words, we're
usually-
trying to figure out what we can do. So you, the chamber, now full back around to the chamber and to the town saying, we don't have to wait on Washington to get well. We want every one of our employers to sign up to get us well to start with, because it's the single most important thing that we can do. And we can tell you that from Washington, but it's not nearly as effective as local people saying to your employees, and you got a company that can't afford it, maybe a vendor downstream, and you know them, hey, we'll come down there and we'll let you send your employees in to check with our nurse this morning too. I mean, I think that community spirit exists here, so that this community could absolutely do everything here. So these little deals here that the one with the box needs a big discussion group before we come next time. But these things are to-do items that maybe we come away from today with, so it's just not more political razzmatazz that we're doing. I'm just tired of political razzmatazz. We must be solving the problem of the country, and so we're trying to put things here that you all will take the lead on, and you're going to then show us, and I'm going to go to every other community and I'm going to give the same presentation as a proactive thing that's going on here. So is that fair enough? We're talking in bigger terms here. We're not going to finish today, right? Right. Everybody else is not shaking their heads. Just Haley's saying, not putting pressure on them. Okay, the discussion is not over, it's just continuing. So what other things?
Is it physically impossible to get those people in Washington without increasing budgets to equalize them more? I mean, I know you're saying because of big money and the big folks in the city, but is there any equity where everybody should pay equal pay for equal job? I mean, they should do that.
Yeah, I mean,
It's the law every place else, so why would it take somebody like the doctors that we know and love you that have devoted years and years and pay them less for a great job, more independently? Is there any way to fight that?
Let me tell you that you saw, what was the movie, Private Ryan, where they're going in and landing on the beach and they got to go straight up the wall, they got to climb the rock cliff.
Yeah.
That's the rock cliff that exists, and I climbed it almost by myself.
Yeah.
In the first year that I was there, against both parties saying, I'm not going to let you get by with saying it's cheaper to get people out into rural communities. It's not. And so we fought them off in a small way. Also, almost single-handedly, I took on the whole issue of oncology. At that point, they were starting to squeeze off the money. I don't know if you remember, but the cancer clinics.
Yes.
Those drugs, we're giving you so much for those drugs. I said, those drugs are miracle drugs. You put it, used to, you have to run you guys are in medicine, you run a ray here. To do something over here, you have to put my whole body under some sort of radiation. Now then, you can take medicine that goes right to the point, doesn't affect the rest of it all. I mean, I never was worried about losing my hair or anything, but still, I mean, it wouldn't cause me to do much more of that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've got miracle drugs, and you're going to squeeze off the money to them because it looks like a big number on the paper.
Yeah.
Ask the people who are getting the treatment before you do that. And so,
Yeah, that's right.
So I've fought fights. You'd have to question, how. I mean, sometimes I just take on fights that are not winnable because we should be fighting fights. Okay,
Availability, change the tax code. Right now, employers get tax deductions for the health insurance. Individuals, the entrepreneur that works hard doesn't get a tax break.
Yeah.
He's paying after taxes. The employees at the employer are paying pre-tax.
You're 100% on point, and to tell you the truth, that's big versus small.
Yeah.
The big unions say that we're going to push over here and make it happen because we want people to kind of be locked into the unionized employers. And again, I'm getting on really tricky ground. I apologize. I'm just trying to tell you that also is a big versus small issue. And so they've been able to crank back the same treatment under the tax code, and so the insurance tax code is something that's, you all will not affect that fight here. It's in Washington, and frankly, you can hear I'm pretty schooled on the idea, and I know where the pressure comes on the other side. The chances of beating it, I think we have to concentrate on what we can do. I want to pick something else out to you. How are we doing on time? We're here till 5 in the afternoon, is that right?
No, you're good for a little while longer.
Sandwiches are thrown in bulk, I think. No, we're going to wrap this up in 10 minutes. But
You got about 10, 15.
Availability. Anybody in the military here? Anybody ever been in the military? Well, let me tell you, a little bit, okay, this is typical of America. We're getting about 97% survival in war zones right now. It is phenomenal. It is happening. It's the best survival in all of history. Now, who do you think provides the care that gets that done? Care out in the field to keep soldiers alive.
Military doctors, medics.
Medics.
Medics. Medics. Who said that? I want you to raise your hand. It's not doctors, it's medics. Yes, okay, medics. Now, since I'm not even in the military, I won't bother asking you. You know how long medics go to school for?
Couple weeks.
About 90 days.
Yes.
90 days. In 90 days, you can train somebody. We're on the availability question. In 90 days, we train somebody that can go out into a war zone and keep more, 97% alive. And we say that those providers can't come and try to keep you alive here. Certainly the survivability rate should be greater in non-war zones than war zones. And I'm telling you that we must think about these kinds of access to service. The reason that that insurance is so high is because healthcare is so high. The reason healthcare is so high is because we limit the number of people who can treat you. Now, I'm getting really on tricky ground with some of the providers in here, and that's okay, because we must challenge ourselves, or that 3623 is going to ruin the nation. The 3623 has to be solved, and we're not going to solve it by providing another $1 trillion system. I'm just saying that again, both parties have not figured it out, and so I'm not trying to argue again. If you like the Affordable Health Care Act, I'm not trying to argue against it, just saying that it's going to break the country along with everything else we're doing is going to break the country. So it's not that we just have to fix this, but this health care, this whole discussion we're having affects the quality of life, and so it should be one of the top, and it's also one of the top expenditures in the nation. It's also going to be one of the big continuing costs of the government if we keep doing what we're doing. So it's where the discussion needs to start. And so when I got the word from Haley that you all wanted to have this discussion, she didn't know where I was going because I didn't know where I was going, but as I have gone through the last 6 months, this discussion has been forming in my mind. I'm telling you, we must figure out the access, and if we can do it in war zones with people who are trained in 90 days, I'm telling you, we should be able to do it here. So, something really outside the box, and you all can wrestle around with this. We won't finish this discussion. In fact, I don't even want to do it except throw it out there to, I don't know, I'll walk out the door and let y'all fight over it. But, so we've got all these medics coming home from Afghanistan and Iraq. They've been trained. Many are in our National Guard. What if we sent those same people that are helping keep folks alive in the war theater into the rural areas of America, and they can operate here, and they can still be qualifying to use when they sign up and get training, it's pay for, you pay for over the time of your life. So if you get trained in something like that, it may be 4 years service or 5. What if they could expend their 4 years of active duty requirements here, providing services, maybe in the primary health care thing? Is that making sense? Is that, not do you like it or dislike it, is it making sense that it would cut costs tremendously because they would earn what they're making, and in fact, they probably could stay in the Guard and work here in their job, and then 2 days a week or 3 days a week, your employers again, we're going to make this work for a community. The employer says, okay, I'm going to take your services. You can work 4 days a week, and you can work 1 or 2 over there in your Guard duty in the healthcare field. And we'll let you work 10 hours or 4 days or something in order to get your 40 hours a week. But you go over here and you got a second part-time job trying to make the health of the community better. And meanwhile, that 4 years or whatever you were obliged to pay back to the government, if you're serving in a rural, small area, then we check that off and that qualifies. that's out of the box. I mean, at least you gotta give me credit for that. You might hate it, but
That's where most of the PAs came from initially. The physician assistant
Yeah.
people. My first husband was a Vietnam vet medic, and he came back and became a PA.
yeah,
And they had to go back to school an additional year or two and get it. But the difference was that the kind of stuff they did in the field where a lot of it was applicable, but a lot of it was geared toward acute injury and illness and life. So they didn't know how to do the things like.
absolutely. There may be training,
So
there may be things to get overdone.
But that is how that profession got started.
So maybe we then simply, we need something that would allow that transition to occur more readily. But, yeah, but whatever. But certainly, if you're in Hidalgo County and you don't have a nurse at all, if, say at Animas, you don't have a nurse, they've got a full operating room sitting out there at the middle of Animas in Plias, I'm sorry. Plias has got a full operating room, nobody out there, it used to be a company town. And so surely we could hook them up, and then we tie into the universities so that a physician is actually overseeing them when they're doing something critical and says, hey, if you'll connect this thing to that thing, and if you'll take this little piece and move it over here, we can survive for the ambulance trip back into DC, or back into Albuquerque. Now then suddenly you have a level of care that is overseen by somebody that's very, you know, that's schooled as much as they need to be. We're giving survivability in order to get to the better care, which is exactly what they do in the field. The medics only stabilize things, and then Balad Air Force Base was actually one of the most stunning. I mean, little low ceiling tents. We went there several times. You go in and you go in these low ceiling tents, and they're doing all sorts of, they've got world-class surgeons in there. So they stabilize them in the field, get them over here. So this stuff that you're talking about, I don't know much about medical terms, but let's say that there's some sort of heart problem, stabilize them over here.
Yes.
Here's what you need to do, 1, 2, 3, 4. You've done that. Watching over the shoulder through their, computer lens, Skype or whatever they're doing. Whoops, do that, and now then send them up here. They'll survive for the next 5, 6 hours. We get them up here and we'll take care of them. And I think that we're going to have to think outside the box there.
That's what our EMTs are doing currently.
It could be that we make the MTs actually more formal right now. And so basically, these are the discussions and the reasons that we hope to get all of you here. And frankly, we got much further along in the discussion than I hoped. I thought we'd probably be on a narrower seam of discussion. Very productive. I think we got representatives from all areas. And this is the way we're going to solve the country. We're going to solve the health care with these discussions from here towards Washington, not Washington towards here. Because always, you all, I haven't heard one special interest in here. I've heard people with different opinions, which is what we're supposed to be about. But I didn't hear anybody grinding their axe in order to make it work for their particular group. I think that Americans are ready to come together and start solving these problems in a way. And so just know that it starts here. It's just like the lizard, it starts here. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to come in and visit and appreciate you all showing up. This is a much larger group than I'd hoped to see. I appreciate the wide range of viewpoints, because we do need, you see where this discussion is going to involve employers, it's going to involve the healthcare providers, it's going to involve primary care, it's going to involve nurses, doctors, the whole thing. One last thing before we let you loose, and that is community. Community. I'll put this up here, because it's something that you all do pretty well. I don't know if you're aware of it. But I'm telling people, communities, yeah, the doctor doesn't want to come here from New York City or Minneapolis. Raise your own. And you all have several physicians that are back here, don't you, that grew up here, went to high school here? Yeah, you do this better than anyone else. Something about Artesia where people just want to come back home. There were 6 kids growing up in my family. I'm the only one still in Hobbs, so it tells you kind of, we got 20% rate of retention. Y'all got a much better rate. You grow your own football coaches, you grow your teachers, you send them off and they come back here. And so know that that's something that you should do more of. You do it well, you do it better than any other community in the state right now. But this should be an ongoing thing that you advertise in the families. We want your child, we don't care who you are, we want your child to grow up to be a physician. So you have to start getting sure they get the sciences right now. And out there in Artesia, those moms and dads are going to be thinking, that could be my kid. and it's that belief that we can solve the problems, that's when we begin to solve the problems of the country. Washington will never convince you of this. Washington will never send you a physician here. If you train your own, if you grow them up, if you train them here, they're never going to want to go there because they want to be close to their families. And so, again, this is probably the most critical thing you can do. You already do a good job on community. You know, you hug together as a community, you hold together, and you do that well. So, any last things? You got to throw something quick. We're trying to wrap it up. You all get out of here at 1. We got things to do. We're going to continue the discussion before I see you next time. Can y'all get an email list going? Can y'all be chattering back and can y'all have a discussion group just of this, to have emails back and forth? And you should be wrestling around these things. Believe that, I mean, I didn't get all the points, but wrestling around with these things, and so that the next time we come here, the discussion maybe will have moved 5 generations past this, because it's probably 100 steps in the process to do these things. But what can we do, what can we do, what can we do? That's always it. Not, we're going to wait on Washington to change a law that's never going to get changed. We're going to hope they do, and I'm going to go and I'll fight for those changes. But you all doing the discussions, and what can you do here? Then we'll try to involve a couple of other communities in the next one. We'll put it virtual, and so we'll do that. We're practicing with that. As we begin to discuss it and cure it locally, then Washington will start following suit. Washington gets really unsettled when people start deciding things for themselves like they should be. All right, fair enough. Know that I really appreciate, we didn't get off on, I probably got on the trickiest ground of any, talking political stuff. Politics are not going to cure it. Politics is how we run for office. Now we need to be working as the country on these things. So again, thank you very much. Give yourselves a round of applause. God bless you all. Thank you.